So first off, it's very nice to meet you all. So let me introduce myself. My name is Chi Chen, staff designer from Adobe Document Cloud team. It's a great honor today to be here today to share my learnings and thoughts with you. So before we start, let me just introduce myself very quick. So I was originally born and raised in China. I came to US in 2012 and become a proud Hoosier at Indiana University, study human computer interaction design. After getting my master's degree, I started my design career, and this year marks my 10th year working as a US designer. And like Joshua said, I spent most of my time at Adobe. I've been working at Adobe for 8 years. So outside my work, I'm a corgi mom, a kitchen nerd, and a crafter. I'm also mentoring a lot of US designers at my free time. So far, I've been helping more than 200 designers and professionals on ADP list, and I'm proud to be recognized as the top 50 female mentors on there. And lately in my mentoring session, to no one's surprise, the biggest topic has been the struggle with the current job search. So I don't know if you guys can do that, but tell me how you feel about your job search right now, or think about it. Like you can type in the chat from 1 to 5, 5 being it's going great for me, 1 be it cannot be any worse. So think about it. Like how do you, if you're in a job search right now, what is your overall sentiment? Yes, I see a lot of 1, a lot of 2, even some minors, which is not surprising. And what I want you to know is that you're not the only one that been struggling with the current market. I don't need to tell you all the challenges that you've been read about on the macro level, but I just want to share some of the data points with you. The US job listing at its peak time has dropped 71% from the peak time of 2023 in 2023 compared to the peak time from the year before. And for each junior level US position, people receive more than 300 applications on the very first day. And among all, fewer than 5% of applicants actually qualified. At the meantime, many hiring managers complain about this cookie cutting portfolio problems and it seems very hard to pick the top candidates at a glance. And I think that's because as a designer, we are taught to follow the very similar design process. And as a result, our scripts are more or less the same. Also, at the meantime, many boot camps and tutorials out there are kind of sharing the same formula of building this perfect portfolio. And even the templates out there, if you take a look, it's pretty much the same content, but just with different wrapping. And on top of that, not everyone gets to work on very eye-catching project like designing the next iPhone, especially as a new graduates. So it seems really difficult to stand out as a newcomer. But it's not really a rocket science if you think about it. Building a case study is basically a US exercise, which we all know very well. So in order to do a good job, we need to first know the user, frame our problem, and then execute with focus. So let's start with our user. I want you to close your eyes and kind of picture this person in your head. Feel free to give them a name or a face yourself. And I'm going to tell you a slice of life of a typical design manager. So I'm a design manager managing a team of 5. It has been crazy lately. My team was put on a lot of high pressure project and everything's on fire. So I put out this job posting asking for additional help. And today I woke up at 7. My first meeting starts at 8. My calendar was filled with back-to-back meetings all the way until 6 p.m. Even between the meetings, I barely have a chance to take a breather. I have a ton of emails and messages waiting for me. And for my own project, forget it. Finally, I made through my day with all the meetings. What a day. After that, I still have a lot of work to do, but I need to spend time with my family. That is very important to me. And after putting my kids to bed, I finally got time to open the email from my recruiter asking me to review 30 applications and give her 3 names for the next round. So pause and think of a moment. How much time and energy you will think these design managers will have for reviewing those portfolios? Now you can open your eyes. So that's a very typical sketch of a busy design manager. And to give you more insights, I ran this quick survey with Adobe Design Group. When asked about how much time do you typically spend reviewing a case study, all my responses saying I spend fewer than 10 minutes, and actually more than 70% spend fewer than 5. I would say 5 minutes are still very generous. Here's a quote from one of our design director. The average amount of time I'd spend on a portfolio is maybe 20 to 30 seconds. At this point, I think I have a very good instinct. And what are they be looking for in this short 30-second? So they're looking for clear problem framing, clear problem and solution framing, engaging storytelling, and the impact of your design solution. However, what I often see is too much content, lack of storytelling, and a lack of design rationale and insights. So with that, how may we build a clear, captivating, and insightful storytelling to make our case study stand out? Next, I'm going to walk you through my thoughts in 3 sections: the opening, the process, and the solution. So let's start with the opening. I call this surviving the first 5-second impression check. It's like running a restaurant on a super busy street with a ton of people walking by. As people pass your storefront for the first 3 seconds, how would you catch their eye and then convince them to walk in the door? So we're facing the same problem here. The picture I'm showing here is you probably have seen it. Japanese restaurants are known for putting those fake foods on a display in the front. Does that give you an idea? That's right. Always put your result first. Spoilers are welcome here. You want to convince your audience with strong stats to show your design impact and a catchy visual to really tickle their interest to start to read more. So the example I'm showing here is from the design agency. They use a very clear stats, recognitions, and eye-catching design results at the site that really convinced me that this case study is going to worth my time, and it convinced me to read on. Besides just showing the results, we also want to help our reader understand what the problem is. Many case studies really emphasize on the scale and the size. Things like redesigning the whole Starbucks app. Big as it may sound, it's still pretty vague and hollow. I believe, compared to boiling the whole ocean, a punchy, interesting, and memorable problem statement it's actually gonna catch more of my interest. And on top of that, if you can come up with a clever framing to make this more memorable, then that'll be better. 2 iconic example I put here is one, a chicken for every pot, and the more famous one, put a man on the moon. What they have in common is they're succinct, they're visual, and they're memorable for decades. So come up with a very strong and crisp problem statements to really get your reader curious. So now that if you have get people foot in your door, congratulations. So now let's get into the meat of your case study, the process. This is probably the hairiest and the most fluffy part that you need to get right. Yes, you can say all the designers, we all follow the same design process, but each of our journeys are very different because we're faced with different challenges and we all have our own flavor of creativity. So your design process is supposed to demonstrate your unique design journey and showcase your strong creativity and how you solve the problem. However, in many case studies, the process I've seen are very samey and hollow. It's almost just like going through a checklist or going through the motion. So let's see how we can fix that. Does this look familiar to you? I admit, I used to love sharing those walls of sticky notes and the complex journey map and the personas that lose idea in the character sheet, because I just think that really shows my hard work, isn't it? But the quantity does not equal quality. From a hiring manager perspective, these artifacts are so difficult to read and is nearly impossible to read anything at a scan. And it's actually not going to tell me much about the quality of your process. So if you're still only featuring those front and center or relying on them to tell the whole story, consider what I'm going to say next. So what determines the quality? The strong insights. The strong insights really demonstrate your in-depth thinking into the problem and the quality of your observation. On top of that, it also is the stepping stone for me to navigate your design journey. So always put your top insights for each design step and make that really easy to read. And what do I mean by strong insights? Here's an example. A weak insight might sound like Gen Z user take more selfies. Yes, that's probably true, but it's just very obvious and vague. Always almost want me to question, do we really need the research to extract that? On comparison, here's another one. More than 50% of our Gen Z users wish they could set the front camera as a default. It's detailed, it's visual, and it just gives me some new information that amazes me. So overall, if you can make your reader feels like they've learned something from you today, then you've got it. Now you have those strong insights. I think another reason why a lot of process feels samey or like a checklist, because they just those insights do not connect. And what I mean by that is the insights from your previous step does not necessarily tell me how does that guide you to your next step. Of course, our design process is never linear, but it should still be coherent. Your reader should be able to trace to your final solution all the way back from the very beginning. It's almost like a very well-written detective novel. I need to see how you unpack the story, peeling the onion and reach the end. So demonstrate how each step informs your next step really shows the ability to transform observations and data into actionable design decisions. The example I show here does a really good job. It basically just used the conclusion and the insight for the previous step as a title that opens the next step. So finally, we get to the solution. So if you have done a great job to get people interest up and building a compelling story with your process, this is your moment of a resolution, the climax. So the job of the solution is definitely more than just showing the pixels in your design craft. It is your insights, your creativity, and your strategy all coming together. So when I'm presenting my design, I usually put my sales hat on, but I'm not selling the product. I'm selling my skills. I'm selling my craft and my design rationale, which is not very obvious just by looking at the screens. However, many designers, we are way too focused on the what, describing our problem. Honestly, from a hiring perspective, hiring managers are not really interested in the product itself. We're not going to buy it, or we're buying your specific design. What we're interested is the skills and the thinking that reflects behind these pixels that you can bring to your next role. So always focus on why you're doing this design. Here's a quick example. What I mean by describing a problem? Things like our design features a quick save button that let user bookmark tasks instantly. That tells the feature very clearly, but didn't tell me why you made this choice. So instead, focus on the why. Our user demands speed and efficiency, so I added a quick save button as a primary call to action for bookmarking their most urgent tasks in one tab, saving them time by minimizing the steps needed to track urgent items. And don't forget about your users. I hope you didn't just left them at a persona stage. Your user is a living character, continually calling back to their original problems and really showcase how you design bring them to a happy place. Not only demonstrate the effectiveness of your design, but also your user obsession. So it's always a good habit to remind your readers of what your original problems are and who they are as a user, and using it as a test to really validate your solution. And even more, you can even put that a step further. You can even present your design using storytelling from user perspective for a more convincing and a vivid story. And like I said, building case study is a UX exercise. So always test, validate, and iterate. Building a diverse testing panel for yourself can really bring you a lot of different perspective. You can show that to your design peers who can give you great design ideas and bounce different thoughts with you. You can show that to your non-designer friends or even your families, because there will be a great test to see if your case study is easy to understand. And of course, there are many design veterans like me who would just be happy to lend you a hand on the online mentoring platform. And we can give you professional advice from an industry perspective and also having a very honest conversation. And then lastly, of course, your interviewers, your actual user. I know there has been advice about like always follow up with asking for feedback, which is a good idea, but just please understand that they're so busy. There are times you probably will not hear back from them. So what I would suggest you do on the side is pay extra attention when you present your case study, watch their reaction and the engagement. Are they asking questions? Or are they asking more of a clarifying questions? Or they just completely lost it? That should give you a pretty good gut check about how you case study are landing with them. So at the end, I want to end today's talk sharing my own story, finding my very first job. I was actually one of the last person from my graduate class to find my first job. And I was definitely very stressful and pulling my hairs out. I remember I spent countless nights redoing my portfolio and trying to work on my weakness, especially the visual design. Because I believe that's what got people hired. And that's what kind of I was falling behind. So I was trying so hard, brand myself, position myself as this very strong visual craft designers, but it just didn't land anything. And one time at an interview, I was done presenting my main case study, and I could just tell the manager was not impressed. But we have some time left, so I pull up this school project from the bottom of my barrel, which I haven't touched when I start doing the job hunting because I just believe it's not important. But she immediately noticed this picture from my case study. And it turned out she's looking for someone who can do the end-to-end thinking and the journey mapping for her project. And this picture is a perfect answer to that. So that was such a moment of awakening for me because that has always been my unique strength from grad school. But I just long forgotten it because I was so busy trying to become someone else. What I'm trying to say here is there are so many classes and articles out there telling you what a good designer, what a good portfolio is supposed to look like. And we're just pressure ourselves to fit into those images and over fixating on where we're lacking. Of course, we should still try to meet a basic standard for each job to become a well-rounded designer. But just remember, it's always your strength, your unique strength that sets you aside and leads you to the next opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that talk, Chi. There's so many good tips. Especially, I love the one which you gave about, just see what the interviewer is telling you in terms of like when you're actually presenting. See, are they asking clarifying questions? Are they asking questions? Are they just quiet? I think that tip was so good. Now, we've got quite a few more questions from the people who are participating. They've put it in the Q&A. I'm going to start with the first question from an anonymous participant, which says, I'm a beginner. I don't have any results to show for my hypothetical case studies. What can I do instead?
So I think by result, oftentimes we think is that it has to be tested by the market. It has to be something that launched. But you can definitely still build a thesis about how your design make your user, even though they may not be the real product. How does that solve their original problem? I believe there is still like good results there because that's what leads you to the final design. So it may not be quantitative, but it can be qualitative. And also, don't forget, you have run your own user testing. So you can test your design to see, oh, before maybe user, if you're doing a redesign, before user might take 5 steps to do this thing, but with my new design, they do 3 steps. Or you can tell them how they feel. Maybe before they feel like, oh, I was really bothered by this problem, but with new solution, why it might help me feel a little bit at ease. And why is that? So I would say there's still heuristic value in there, even though it's not a real launch product.
Awesome. The next question which we have is from Daniel. He says, where does the data come from? Is it just from the US market? I think, yeah, you can answer that. I think he's maybe referring to the selfie question.
Yeah, that's a very great question. And actually, I will make sure to add a note. That's my own oversight. So this particular, sorry, I'm just flying so much. That I think you're asking about this particular data, this one. I think, yeah, so this very first data point is actually found in a study done by Indeed. So they actually show this graph of from the peak time of 2022, the job listing market in the US, and then down in 2023. I just say like it's if you really look at historical data, where 2023 is, it's actually about 2021. So it's not that the US market has tumbled, like collapsed completely. It just, we've seen this probably like a little bit of a bubble phase in 2022 that opens up so many opportunities. And then as the market shrink back to where it is, then we just start seeing there's so much layoffs and the shrink in the headcount. And the other two of the data, I actually do some just casual internet search I know a lot of the LinkedIn posting going to tell you like 1,000 people apply to this application, but realistically, most of the hiring managers say they probably get around 2 to 300 of a real application at their end.
Awesome. That was really good to know that it came, from Indeed, and you got a lot more context on that. We have another question now, which is, are there any example case studies that we can use to guide like you can share that, can guide them?
Yeah, I'm actually going to add that to my final resource. I just came across this site that has basic collection of case study. I think it's like 50 case studies, which I have not really dived into, but there's one example. Sorry. So one of the examples showing here is from Work & Co. It's a design agency, but this one about how they redesigned the whole IKEA experience, I think is really worth reading. It's definitely more of a professional and more like senior people have written it, but you can definitely get a sense of what problem they focus on and how they craft their languages. There's tons of great vocabularies that you can probably borrow. The other one that I show when I talk about process is this case study. It's all public, so you can view their case study. What I like about his case studies is very succinct and simplistic and really focus on the rationale. It's not too much about the technical side of things, but really how he solve a problem. And I have links to all those examples in the deck.
And we can share them with all the participants after in a thank you note when we send it to everybody with the recording of the session.
Yep.
Another question which we've got, I'm trying to ensure we don't repeat the questions because we have limited time, is from the perspective of a beginner UX designer, I'm working on a small scale project. How can I convey the impact of my design per se?
That's a great question. I always believe that no matter how small the problem is, it's always, as long as you make a case for a legitimate problem, as long as you have a real user problem and you have a solid solution to it, then that's a complete case study. It doesn't have to be the volume of your result. It doesn't have to be like 10 pages or 100 pages. Even if you say, I fixed this button, but how do I fix it? What problem am I solving? What kind of thought process I went through to reach my final solution? And how do I prove that this new button works than the old, a lot better than the older one? Then I think you have showcased a complete spectrum of design thinking. So to me, if I were doing the hiring, I totally understand that not everyone can get hands-on more impactful project. But really what I'm interested is how you solve a problem, no matter big and small. The size of the problem not necessarily indicates your ability. So I would say like, don't let that to discourage yourself, but really focus on how can you tell a succinct story and frame that in the way that can really make it memorable.
Okay, we're gonna answer three more questions. I know there are like 11 questions unanswered, but we have another workshop starting very soon. So this one is actually a good one. It is, you know, some people say that you have to be an exceptionally strong visual designer, and you kind of mentioned that a little bit today.
Mhm.
And your advice was to play on your strengths, but sometimes the first review is an HR person, and they may be visually like maybe biased more towards pretty visuals. How do you tackle that problem with the HR person as a visual bias?
Yeah, I think that's a very realistic questions. And I say even today, I'm still kind of feel a little imposter when among my peers who's all they're all like super creative and great visual designers too. But honestly, since we have very limited time and energy, what I would say is play smart. There are many great templates out there. So I say if you were still trying to build your site, consider otherwise because those great templates will get you to a great start. And then, like in terms of your actual design, I would say that thing does come with time. Like just honing in your own general user visual design skill takes time to build up. But in the short term, what you can do is find your peers, find some designers to give you some solid visual feedback. Maybe it's just a matter of the layouts, maybe it's a matter of the type choices. So I think you just need to find the right person who can give you those feedback and just like iterate that quickly.
Okay, awesome. Another one was, I think this is kind of difficult to answer, but how do you show screenshots of projects in your portfolio if you've already signed an NDA? Like, you've done an internship maybe for a company like Apple or Samsung or someone, like, there's an NDA. How do you get around those NDAs and tell people this is what I did?
Yeah, that is very tricky. I get that question all the time. I say this, my take is always one, you should always at least put a password on those case studies or not making that like publicly searchable. Like a stranger shouldn't just go into your portfolio and be able to view case study. That's not okay. But if you put in a password and only sharing password with people that you trust, I think that's actually okay. And if your project is really confidential, say with like governments or something really sensitive, then one way I've seen people do it is just they will prepare their own draft of NDA. They will actually talk to the company and say, can I just have them sign an NDA and then see my projects? Or some also be very creative. They basically just like twist the whole subject. Like, so basically talking about the same process, but may not be able to show the complete results. But I always have like a double thoughts on that because I've seen so many candidates like coming in, but they just could not show everything, which is such a shame. So I would say if you are really concerned, talk to your employer and take on their thoughts. But to me, unless you are showing results to your direct competitor of this company, most of the companies, honestly, I'm not interested in the product itself. So you can ask me to sign an NDA, I will not complain, or you just give me a password, or you can even use that, put a case study in the PDF and just share that over the email.
Okay, awesome. I know there are a lot more questions. We would love to answer them, but unfortunately, we have to conclude today's talk here. Thank you so much, Chi, for joining us. I really appreciate you coming in. And if you want to review today's talk, we will be sharing the slides with you as well as the recording and the resources Chi has mentioned. Once again, you can also find Chi on ADP lists as well. You know, as she mentioned, she's one of the top 50 female mentors on the platform. So you can definitely get some feedback from her. And as she's mentioned, she's been in the game for over 10 plus years and 8 years at Adobe. So definitely there's a lot of good feedback you can get from someone as experienced as her. Thank you so much, Chi. I will now stop recording the session.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone.